Hello and welcome to my channel. Here is a quick tutorial, very simple tutorial on how to achieve this twist knot skirt. So for this tutorial we'll be making use of our basic front skirt pattern. Okay, so I've highlighted my hip line measurement, the skirt length measurement, and I've also added 4 inches after the normal skirt length measurement, and that's because the style of the skirt we are making have an asymmetric hemline. All right, so you can add 5 inch, 6 inch, depend on how deep you want that part to be. Okay, now also know that for this tutorial all the twists we are doing falls basically at the left side of the hip. Okay, so you can actually switch it and make it at the right side or the left side, but for the purpose of this tutorial I'm making everything on the left side. Okay, so now let's go ahead and draft this. To achieve this, from the crease line we've achieved at the middle part, you want to come in by 4 inches, or you just use your dart measurement. All right, so my dart is 4 inches, so I'll just use that same 4 inches to come in from the middle point. You come in at that 4 inch. Now this is where we're going to be doing altering this pattern from. So you want to connect that 4 inch from that hip line to the new skirt length measurement. Okay, so just use a straight your ruler and rule from that 4 inch at the hip part, rule it to meet up at the middle part, okay, of your new skirt length measurement. Now we want to use this to achieve that asymmetric hemline. All right, so now from that part as well, I'll now connect it to the side seam. Just connect from that down part there to the side seam. All right, so we successfully achieved the asymmetric hemline for that right side. Now work at the upper part now. So from that 4 inches again, just connect it to your waist, beginning of your waist. All right, like you see me do. From that from that 4 inches you came in, just connect it. Now we are done with the right side. Now we'll be working on the left side. So for this left side now, remember we came in from the waist part, we came in by 7 inches to achieve our hip line. Okay, that is for mine. All right, mine is 7 inches. I'll impute that 7 inches downwards after the hip line as well, just to make sure that what I'm working with is even. So from that our vocal point, I would like to call it our vocal point, just mark it to your waist, beginning of your waistline, and repeat it as well to that new 7 inches mark we made. So we'll achieve for the left side and we'll also achieve for the right side as well. Now, so we'll go ahead now and cut out this pattern. So we'll be cutting out the parts that we don't need, and while cutting you want to make sure that the useful side of the pattern are still connected together, so to avoid confusion. So forgive me, I actually didn't know that my phone was recording on portrait, but it's going to be 5 minutes or 10 minutes from now. All right, so let's work on our patterns. So from the pattern, the left side, you want to divide from the hip part to the waist part into two, then rule it again to the vocal point. Repeat the same thing as well from the hip to the 7 inches downwards, divide it into two, then connect it back to the vocal point. We are done with the left side. And also to avoid confusion, you just want to number them. Okay, I numbered mine 1 2 3 4. Okay, so repeat the same thing on the right side as well. From the waist to the hip line, you want to divide it into two equal parts. All right, then connect it to our vocal point. Then from the hip line, just come down by 7 inches. I've already done that. Then connect from that 7 inches to our vocal point. Just go ahead as well and number them 1 2 3 4. You can also now disconnect the two parts, the left pattern and the right pattern. Okay, now also before we start altering our pattern as well, you can just write the hip line. Okay, write it out so you don't mix it up, because this is where it might get confusing if you don't impute your labels. All right, so now also know that for this slashing we are doing, the slash and spread method we want to use, we'll be slashing where the hip line is, we'll be slashing that from the side seam, okay, from the side seam into our vocal point. I know you already understand what I mean when I say vocal point now. So you can see I'm slashing from the hip line alone. So from the hip line, you're slashing from the side seam into your vocal point. But for the remaining ones labeled 1, 2, and 3, 4, to slit 1, 2, in between 1, 2, you want to slit from the vocal point into your side seam, okay. And also to slit number 3 and number 4, you'll be slitting from the vocal point into the side seam, okay. So let me just explain that before we go ahead. That's why I wanted to explain that before we go ahead, to avoid confusion, okay. So in case you find this confusing at this point, I strongly advise that you watch this part one or twice or thrice, okay, so that you can get it. It's very easy, but it might look confusing if you're just trying it for the first time, okay. So you can now, once you are done now, you can now go ahead and slash it. Placing an additional paper underneath this pattern in order to achieve your slash and spread method. You can open this up as much as you want, but the rule is, at least for me, just ensure that the so to determine how wide I wanted mine to be, I made it just 8 inches, okay, just as wide as 8 inches. So I'll just go ahead now. Once I'm done, I'll go ahead and cut out this fabric, this pattern, then I'll be transferring it to my fabric. But before we transfer to the fabric, let's work on the left side of this pattern, okay. So like the same way we did for the right side, you want to ensure you mark out your hip line so that when you're slashing you don't make mistake. Remember, from the hip line we slash from the side seam into the vocal point, but from number 1, in between number 1 and number 2, you slash from the vocal point to the side seam, and in between number 3 and number 4 as well, you slash from the focal point into the side seam. So before we do that, we'll just label it side seam. You know this part are smaller than the right side, so you want to label it so you don't mix it up by the time you are done cutting them in tiny pieces, okay. So it's basically the same thing we did on the right side as well. That's what we are repeating on this left part. So once you're done as well, you'll be placing this on a new, you'll be placing a fresh paper underneath it so that you can also slash. So basically the same way you did for the other side is the same way, but for this I slashed it by, the wideness I used was just 4.5, not as wide as the other one, alright. So I'll just go ahead now and cut out this pattern, then we'll be transferring both the and the left side pattern into our fabric, okay. Now immediately you are done cutting out your pattern, you want to make sure that at the hip line, you want to indicate that it is the hip line so you don't mix it up. If you watch closely, they look alike. I want to make sure you place this on the right, place your pattern on the right side, the exact way it should look. Okay, so I'm actually trying to hold this because I placed my fabric on the bias form. If you can see, place it on the bias form because the fabric is a bit hard in texture. So now I want to make sure I achieve that same fullness, okay. Cutting it straight. Now remember that this is our side seam, so I'm not adding any sewing allowance on this side, but at the hem I added 1 inch at the hem, then at the side as well I added 1 inch because I'm going to be folding this part. Then if you look closely, I've indicated where the side stops, okay. Now this is where the upper part will be, that's the upper part, and this is the side seam. Then this part is the part we'll be joining back. That hip part that we slitted. You can see I made a mark here. So I'll be joining from this point to this point, from this point to this point. So I'm making sure the two of them match back. Okay. So I hope this is explanatory enough. Let's go ahead and cut this out. So I'll be cutting out my designs now. So note that if you are working with a stretchy fabric, a fabric that is lighter in texture, maybe like a crepe, a light scuba, any stretchy fabric, you don't need to place it on bias form anymore. Okay, you can just place it the normal way and just cut. Okay.
Side, I've also gone ahead to add. Remember, this is our side seam. You can see it SM. This is also the side seam. I've added my sewing allowance to this part. There's no need adding sewing allowance to this part. This is the hip line. Remember the place that we added that marks to. Still remember the hip line. We added just half of an inch on that side. Then this is the part. This is number one. This is number four. This will be the upper part and this will be the down part. Alright, so I added 1 inch because I need to fold this part. Okay, so I'll just go ahead now and cut this out. Don't forget to make a mark so that you know where each part is going to go.
So now to work on the right side, you want to make sure that the right side of the fabric is overlapping the right side of the other fabric. So you go ahead now and just sew down. That was that hip line part. So we're sewing the hip line part together again. Okay, so you can just pin this down, but as you're pinning, make sure that that mark we made, the middle point is meeting each other. Okay, that middle point, that mark we made there, make sure that it is still even and it's still at the middle point. If it's not there, make sure you make it align. So you go ahead and sew it down by half of an inch, but don't sew it to the end, just leave 1 inch opening, okay, where the other parts will be passing through. The left side of the wrap will be passing through. Okay, so just go ahead and sew this down by half of an inch. I'll also be sewing down the the other side, not the side seam, but this other side. Okay, I'll be sewing it down. Remember, I added 1 inch of sewing allowance to it, so I'll be sewing it down as well. Then the hem as well, I'll be sewing it as well. So I'll just take it to my sewing machine and run my stitches on them.
This small one now. Okay, remember that notched part? That's where the marks are. So I'll be taking off my pattern paper. This is the front now. We'll be taking this part. Remember, this is the part that will be coming together this way. Okay, so you just take this part. This part will be folding it. Take this part carefully and tuck it in into that little space, that 1 inch space left. Okay, this is the hip part. We want to join it back together as well. This is the side seam, this is the side seam. Okay, so take this out carefully this way. This is the side seam we are sewing. The right side facing the right side, but now I'm not sewing it just its own. I'm not sewing it on its own. We are tucking it into this place to sew. Okay, you just take one part like this and tuck it in this way. Alright, and you are able to tuck it in. Then you'll be sewing from here to this part. So you want to sew it as close as possible. Make sure you're sewing the right side and the right side together. Okay, so I'll just take this to my sewing machine and try and make sure I sew as close as possible. Remember, my fabric is also a thick fabric. So I'll just pin this down. I'll just try and make sure that I get it as close as it can be. And this is what you should have once you're done. So I'll just go ahead and sew this down for get back to you. Okay. Joined it already. This is the joining here. So once you are done joining, you want to make sure that you place it the right way. Okay, you adjust it so that the hip part is on this side and that sewn part is on this side. So once you are done sewing, this your sewing should match up with the sewing on this side
So you
as well.
also want to finish up the upper part as well. Then you are done with your twist knot skirt pattern. So let's place this on the front and so you can see what it looks like. And this is how you overlap it on the front of your skirt. Okay, so you have to overlap it firstly on this before you now place it, before you couple your skirt together. So this is what it looks like. Just make sure that it is even with the side seam. Alright, aside from the asymmetric hemline of the down part, which will only be even on one end and the other side will not be even. So you also want to leave half inch at the upper part for joining your band. Okay, so once you're done, this is what you achieve. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. If you did, kindly give this video a thumbs up. If you have any questions for me, you can drop them on the comment section. I'll be there and I'll be willing to answer any of your questions. All right, kindly like, subscribe, share this video, turn on post notification bell so you get notified whenever I post a new video. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you. See you on the next one. Bye for now.